If you also remember, that was the morning of Marianne and my wedding anniversary. And I woke up in a tent with Mr. Mencken. And Marianne walked up to the tent. She saw my tent and was whistling and saying, "Good morning, sunshine," or whatever. And I was reading. Mr. Mencken was still sleeping, snoring. In fact, I unzipped it, and Marianne pokes her head in and says, "Oh." And I said, "Oh." And Charles, or Mr. Mencken, wakes up, and I go, "Oh, Marianne, Charles, Marianne." It's a memory. Forever. A couple of things about that trip, and then I'm going to move on. But some of my fondest one-liners from students were said during that trip. One of them was that I don't know if it was one of you, because I don't remember. It was raining so hard I couldn't see her face. One of the students said, "Mr. Kapp, it is illegal to bring students into the wilderness without cell phone service." And I said, I didn't know that. Thanks for the info. That's good to know. And by the way, we don't have cell phone service, so get over it. We had a couple of students demand immediate exit from this camping experience. I demand immediate exit. And I said, well, it's about a 12-mile hike to Jerome. It's about 25 miles hike to Prescott Valley, and it's probably 13 or 14 down Cotton. So, if you're going to go, let us know, because we want to check on you later, but I wouldn't advise it because there's another storm coming in, and not going to be good. So there were some pretty funny things. But all I will say in conclusion of my reminiscing about that trip is, boy, did it rain. It really rained a lot. And it really rained. And both groups got it, if I remember correctly. It was a rainy August. All right. Little did we know that that camping experience was but a precursor for the next 4 years of Northpoint. And I didn't know it. Little did we know that the challenges we faced on a 3-day camping experience, hiking, being wet, challenges, staying warm, they were just a precursor. In other words, just foreshadowing of the next 4 years with Northpoint. We entered into the grand endeavor of Northpoint with the help of the Gates Foundation and an incredible supportive school board, which I'll mention in a minute. But we had no idea of the challenges we were going to face. From what time do the bells go off at the school, to the grander problems of people not always understanding Northpoint or not accepting Northpoint. Little did we know that camping trip was the beginning of a journey. We had challenges the last 4 years. We had financial challenges. Very difficult to keep a small school open in Arizona, or anywhere, but especially Arizona. We had perception challenges. People did not understand Northpoint. They did not understand the type of learning that was going on. We had misunderstanding challenges. People misunderstood some of the things that Northpoint did. I remember clearly the debate over the first trip down to Nogales on the immigration theme. It was a debate, but you went to Nogales. I remember the debate over the first trip out of country to South Africa. Oh boy. Do you know now that this wonderful school board, they approve trips to Mars now. They don't, it's fine, good, get out of here. Because they realized the value of sending students overseas in international travel. You guys were truly, truly groundbreakers. But you were just involved in it, so maybe you didn't know it. I don't know. I hope you did. But if you didn't, I'm telling you, you were groundbreakers. By the way, Miss Shepherd told me I had an hour and a half, so. There have been challenges, but there has been incredible support for Northpoint. Number one group that has supported Northpoint incredibly is your school board. These three people behind me, Dean Navarro, Dr. Joan Fleming, and Tina Seeley, have been incredibly supportive. You need to thank them. Many, many parts of the community have been incredibly supportive of Northpoint. Rotaries, Kiwanis clubs, service clubs, groups that you probably never know that I run into that say, oh my gosh, those kids are smart. And they're so, like Mrs. St. Amour said, they actually speak in complete sentences with verbs and prepositional phrases and everything. It's incredible. And I've heard that from more than one person in this community. Sometimes we have a tendency to focus on the negative because it hurts. But the amount of positive out there for Northpoint is truly, truly overwhelming. There are also many, many staff in Prescott Unified School District that support Northpoint. We know, some of the ones that didn't were very vocal and very obvious, but there were many, many, many staff members that knew this was a great concept. Because they're true educators. They're educators. They understood. We didn't always hear from them, but they're out there. The other group that has been incredibly supportive is your staff at Northpoint. Geneva St. Amour and her staff, I have the ultimate respect for them. I'm not sure I could have done it. And as I mentioned the other day at your school, especially those folks behind me, because I don't want to look at them because I'll lose it again. You know those people behind me? Miss Shepard and Mr. Memkin, Mrs. Wagner, Mrs. St. Amour, and Coliani was there. We're missing somebody else. Okay, the other folks, all these folks. Some of them were there from the get-go, but those that joined also took a leap of faith. And without that support, Northpoint doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist. A couple of other people I have to thank. I want to thank Expeditionary Learning and Scott Gill. Scott, would you stand up, please? Thank you. Without Scott Gill and Expeditionary Learning and a lovely lady named Jane Hyde, we wouldn't have been able to get the school off the ground. The GACE grant was essential to moving this thing along. Can you name that too? Another person I want to take note of is someone who had probably as much vision as any of us. A wonderful woman named Kim Belli. Kim, would you stand up? I have a fairly good memory. And Kim was the first person to come to me about the idea of Expeditionary Learning High School. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, whatever. And she's very persistent. If you know Mrs. Belli, you know that when she has something she wants to get done, you might as well listen, because eventually you're going to agree. Without Kim, Northpoint doesn't exist. So we owe a great debt to her. The last person I want to thank is my wife, Mary Ann Kapp, because she saw some of the things that I brought home sometimes, frustration over the way Northpoint was being accepted or not accepted. More importantly, she cooked for you. She made really good food, and she brought you hot chocolate that morning. So I think I'd like to say thank you to Mary Ann Kapp also. I've said this over, and Mrs. St. Amour and I had this discussion about, in fact, Geneva very kindly last fall came in and sat in my office and said, how do you feel about Northpoint becoming a charter school? And I said, I'm fine with it. You raise kids so they leave the home. You raise a concept, you nurture it, you do the best you can, but you also are always looking for a way to make sure the idea lives longer. It doesn't just end when perhaps you become not involved. That's the goal of any parent. And I view Northpoint as, from a parent perspective, I think it's wonderful you're becoming a charter school. It's the only way that Northpoint will continue in this state during these economic times. And it will thrive. It will thrive. It will thrive because of you. So what does a camping trip 4 years ago, plus added to the last 4 years, teach us about life? So here comes, as expected, the sage wisdom and advice from the gray-haired person standing at the microphone. Number one, this is obviously my ideas. You can agree or disagree. Perseverance is a good thing. Perseverance. Now, I didn't use the word stubborn on purpose, because stubborn can kind of come back to bite you. Stubborn to me is, I'm going to do this, I'm stuck on this, don't confuse me with the facts, I've made up my mind. That's not perseverance. Perseverance is saying, this is worth continuing. We're going to make sure this happens, and yet we're going to look at all angles of this and see if we have to monitor and adjust, and we have to tweak things, because this thing is going to live. That's perseverance. So perseverance in a camping trip where you're soaking wet and you're going to sleep in a wet sleeping bag that's below freezing at least, that's perseverance. Maybe it's a little stubborn too, but anyway, it's perseverance, because the facts would have said we should have called for help, right? But we didn't. Oh well. That's perseverance. Perseverance is what got Northpoint to where we are right now. Perseverance is when you look at data and you say, to the critics, geez, if this is such a lousy high school, how come they're an excelling high school? Scratch head. How come the AIM scores are equal or higher than surrounding high schools in the area? How come this year's sophomore AIM scores are like knocking the ceiling off? I guess there is learning going on there. What do you know? You let people think about it. Reasonable people will take data in and go, good point. That's perseverance. Perseverance just means you don't give up. Never give up. So point number one is perseverance is a good thing.